currently retired, but I'm sure still still very active in her own scholarship and activities. She is currently in California, I guess, having left Boston, having retired from the School of Theology at Boston University. And we're very excited that she's here today to speak with us and share her wisdom when it comes to ways of living out the diaconate. So thank you so much for being here, Dean Moore. It's wonderful to see your face again.
Before you get started, I just started the recording, and if people don't want to be recorded, they can shut off their video. They can even change your name to something generic if you want. Mary Elizabeth, sorry.
It's great to see you, Anne. What a treat. We're due for a long visit, maybe a Zoom visit with a cup of coffee in our hands. I really appreciate Ted's invitation to be part of this series. I've not been able to participate fully because of conflicts that I have at this particular time of day, but I am so very glad to have participated in part of it and to be here today and be able to engage with you. I'm going to begin with posting a PowerPoint. So if you'll give me just a second. Okay, can you see that? Great. So the focus of this presentation is on the diaconate as liberative service. I'm working on a theology of diaconate which focuses on liberative service. And it is grounded in an awareness of kairos. This is, oops, sorry. Let me go back. I apologize. Oh gosh, sorry folks. This will just take a second. I'm trying to get out of the, okay. Kairos, I think we're in a kairos moment, a critical moment for discipleship writ large, a moment for decision, action, and change. And the future is really luring us or pulling us to discern what is our calling in this new period of time. This is not just a future kairos moment, though. It is a kairos moment that echoes kairos moments throughout time. And one of particular importance is recorded in Luke 4, verses 14 to 20. When Jesus was filled with the Holy Spirit and returned to Galilee and began to teach in the synagogues. When he came to Nazareth, he faced a major moment, and he stood up on the Sabbath day to read the scroll of the prophet Isaiah, and he spoke these words according to the Gospel of Luke. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And then Jesus rolled up the scroll and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. This was a moment of great surprise in the ministry of Jesus, a public coming out. And he chose at that moment to come out with those words of Isaiah, which were both prophetic and in the sense of seeing toward the future, and prophetic in the sense of calling to be with and for the peoples that were on the margins, that were treated most unjustly. And this turns us to the heart of the diaconate, which I suggest is liberative service, a calling for all Christians and a calling for deacons to inspire, lead, and support the service of all. So the calling is both to all Christians and to deacons who have the special call of inspiring, leading, and supporting the service of the whole. The theology of the diaconate as liberative service is marked by compassion, to extend loving attention and care to every being in God's creation. Justice, to ensure thriving for people living in poverty or slavery and those facing mental illness, racial discrimination, and vulnerabilities of political violence and ecological destruction. And to ensure thriving for oceans, forests, and wildlife. You notice that this is beyond an understanding of human justice. It's an understanding of creation justice. And peace, to cultivate communities of reconciliation, reparation, and restoration. Liberative service is giving one's life and all one's efforts for the common good, the flourishing of other human beings and of every being in the universe, every corn plant and flower, every rock and stream, every insect and moose, every atom of air and grain of sand. Liberative service is laying down your life for your friends, as Jesus advocates in the Gospel of John. This is my commandment, says Jesus, that you love one another as I have loved you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And this is where I want to add, and if you'll give me just a second, I need to readjust because my screen has gone to full screen.
Mary, there it is.
I'm not able to change it, so I'm just going to have to do without my written text, and that'll be okay. In my written text, I elaborate on what it means to think of Jesus' service as service for his friends. In the Gospel of John, this emphasis is strong, running through the Gospel, the love of Jesus. And the emphasis on the love of Jesus for his friends is one that I think has guiding power for the diaconate of the future and of the present. It is an image of service that avoids service for people who are less worthy than others or less privileged than others. It is service for those who are less privileged, those pushed to the margins, but it is service as friends, which shifts thinking about the up and down nature of service, neither putting service as a sort of grand privilege to be done for the less fortunate, and neither does it mark service as something that it makes people into servants who are serving others in an upward swing. But service is simply loving your friends. And all peoples, and I'm going to make the case that all of the universe is your friend. That means also that this image converts the idea of enemy into friend. So you are not serving your enemies, but you are serving your friends. The first mark of this kind of liberative service is compassion, and you'll recognize these words, compassion, justice, and peace, because they are often words in our various denominations that are used to describe the diaconate, whether we're talking about deacons, diaconal ministers, or deaconesses. Compassion is extending passion, loving concern to the whole community, attending to and caring for every being in God's creation. So this compassion is not just for the people we know, but it is for the people we don't know, and it is for all beings, for mountains and seas and trees and ants, all of God's creation. Compassion is far more than being nice, which might be nothing more than following rules of socially acceptable manners. Compassion is grounded in being with and listening closely to others. Now take a moment and just think about compassion for ants. Most of us don't want our homes to be filled with ants. We don't want to step anywhere near an ant pile. But actually, ants serve God's creation in remarkable ways. They carry messages that into the forest that warn the forest, the elements of the forest, the trees and plants and other creatures, that danger is approaching. They have message systems and healing systems that are actually vital for the well-being of creation. So compassion is being with and listening closely to others, and the others include all of God's creation. Compassion leads to respectful behavior, but it also leads to ardent advocacy. So, for example, when you see a forest withering, that is a sign that not only does the forest perhaps need water or some other kind of support, but it needs advocacy in the public sphere in order to provide the kind of protection and nurture that the forest needs. Compassion is feeling the feelings of other beings, whether fellow humans or a drought-dried river, or whales in search of a livable habitat. Habitats are very important in our current world, and we're looking at North America in DOTAC. Terribly important. And a recent Supreme Court decision in the United States actually undermines the possibility of protection for half of the habitats in the United States. So advocacy includes advocacy for habitats, advocacy for the poor, advocacy for people who are working and yet have no way of providing for their families and their neighbors and their friends. The second aspect of liberative service is justice. Deacons have always been involved in practical concerns, even in the early church when deacons managed community funds and ensured the equitable distribution for charitable and life-supporting ministries. And I will add here that because deacons were traditionally the keepers of the purse, in the 4th century, they wielded a fair amount of power, and many deacons were assistants to bishops in certain parts of the church. And that actually gave them so much power that it, according to many interpretations of that part of history, they actually ran themselves out of business because they were more concerned with the power of the purse and the power of assisting bishops than with other than with the central meaning of their ministries. So in the Western churches particularly, the deacon faded out of existence for a number of centuries. It never faded in the Eastern church. The emphasis on justice has carried throughout history, and it's the deaconess movements in the Philippines, across Africa, and in the 19th century United States were dedicated to justice, focusing on healthcare, education, care, and advocacy for the poor, and struggles for just public policies. The diaconate in the Philippines and in Canada and in many parts of the world are still focused right there on justice. Justice traditions are carried today by deacons in many different roles, and this is true across denominations and locales, whether deacons serve as social workers, doctors, nurses, teachers, caregivers, community and church musicians, or directors of missional service in their local parishes. Sometimes their work is bold and clear, and sometimes it's behind the scenes, but it is inevitably or hopefully grounded in justice and the pursuit of justice. And the third aspect of liberative service is peace. Just peace building embraces ministries of reconciliation, reparation, and restoration. And in no time of history has that been more important. When you think of the global wars that are raging at this moment, when you think of the divisiveness of politics in many countries, I am particularly aware of that divisiveness in the United States, but it is everywhere. It is in countries of Latin America, North America, Europe, and the Middle East, and so forth. Politics has become so divisive that reconciliation, reparation, and restoration are urgent across Africa and across all countries of the world. It's enacted, this peace effort is enacted in many contexts, whether parishes and local churches, community organizations such as schools and police departments, international negotiation teams, interreligious organizations, or global sites of intense conflict. Peacemaking is intertwined with compassion and justice. Peacemaking enacts love for friends. The other is reframed from enemy or neglected stranger to friend. Friends cannot be ignored as insignificant, but as people whom the church knows as beings of worth to be loved and engaged with dignity. Peacemaking is also in all creation. It requires that deacons and all forms of the diaconate befriend the whole of God's creation, all the creatures and creations that matter to God. May it be so.
Thank you, Mary Elizabeth. I'm going to call on Amy Crawford, who's a diaconal minister in the United Church of Canada, and she's going to say a word of thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Mary Elizabeth, for this interesting conversation and for the new ways of understanding a theology of the diaconate relating to peace, compassion, and justice. These are three important trademarks, and we thank you for helping us think more about them and expand our understanding.
Thank you, Amy. It's good to see you. We're now going to go into the breakout groups. I'm going to turn off the recording.